At 2347 Imperial Standard, 17 billion servitors across Forge World Metallica's Sigma 7th manufacturing complex and its adjacent 4 Forge districts ceased all biological functions simultaneously, while their mechanical components continued operating without deviation. Tech Adept Carvos Theta 9 recorded this impossibility with the cold precision demanded by the Omnissiah's servants, isolating the moment in his memory cogitators like a specimen pinned for dissection. This was not mere malfunction, it was a fracture in the sacred order itself. The transport crawler's treads ground their familiar rhythm against the iron thoroughfares, but no hymnal chorus rose to answer their mechanical prayer. Carvos descended into the primary biomanufacturum's approach galleries, finding them eerily devoid of the red-robed figures that should have moved in ritualistic procession through these hallowed spaces. The usual chanted mill of devotion was absent, leaving only the sterile hiss of vents and the distant hum of processing units. Even his Auspex chimes carried further than they should, unimpeded by the soft roar of flesh lathes and liturgical recitations. The air tasted of iron, antiseptic, and sacred myrrh. Blood's metallic tang threaded through the incense until his olfactory sensors registered dangerous ion concentrations. This gallery ordinarily roiled with tech priests and the constant murmur of calibration prayers. Now the ritual absence made the ceremonial smoke hang in unbroken layers beneath the vaulted ceiling, like an unclosing lid over a tomb of industry. When Carvos passed the first assembly line, the full horror became manifest. Half a dozen servitors sagged in their retention harnesses, cranial plugs still stuttering data sparks across fiber-optic plumes, while their hearts lay silent and cold. Rigor mortis locked their organic limbs, yet their augmetic components continued their eternal cycle. One pair of manipulator arms, sealed into a woman's ribcage, repeated fastening motions in empty air. A jawless man's mechanical legs stamped endless cadence on the rubberized floor, marching nowhere with perfect precision. The flesh forges should have choked on dead tissue, but fresh human substrate continued flowing through translucent feed tubes and wet crucibles. Under the guidance of sacred templates, the living matter extruded, coalesced, and reformed, but not into familiar configurations. These formations corresponded to no standard template construct in Carvos's extensive databanks, no servitor pattern blessed by millennia of use. They were geometric blasphemies, spirals with folded axes, filigrees that knotted back into themselves, curtain veins braided into impossible wedges and fans. Carvos released his servo skull from its travel clamp, the cherub-faced device rising on whining fans with picked lenses dilating like mechanical pupils. The first captures spilled into his noosphere, but as the skull hovered near, a sample dish where tissue fragments aligned themselves into tessellated triangles, the images triggered optical feedback that tasted like copper on his augmented tongue. Pixels shivered sideways, auxiliary lenses hard rebooted, and the pattern seemed to choose precisely where to manifest its distortion across multiple spectra. Sacred manufacturing protocols did not tolerate such improvisation. If flesh was being coaxed into unregistered forms while flesh workers lay dead and their steel bodies continued working, then the Omnissiah's processes were not merely compromised, they were colonized by something fundamentally alien to the machine god's will. Carvos initiated local quarantine procedures, shutters irising closed and vents rerouting through purifier cathodes. His boots left precise prints through condensation that drained from the ceiling in metallic threads as he followed arterial lines deeper into the complex. Between towers of organ tanks that pulsed like distant drums, conveyors carried their offerings in stately procession. Incomplete limbs, spine segments, ocular clusters, each drifting toward destinations they would never reach now that receiving bays were manned by vigilant corpses. The servo skull circled him with cheerful electronic chatter, its loyalty a small comfort in the oppressive silence. It captured another tissue array, organic matter arranged in a careful ring tinged with sickly green luminescence. Within that ring, Something shimmered in directions his vocabulary could not describe, triggering fresh waves of optical feedback that forced him to look away. Movement registered at the periphery of his motion detection subroutines. A subtle change in shadow patterns where lumen strips strobed across floor grating, slick with condensate and blood. Carvos froze, and his servo skull mirrored him like a faithful ghost. Across 3 vat units and a bank of pumping bellows, something large dragged itself from between stained pillars of steel and flesh. It was not a servitor. No cables tethered it, no harness contained it. Its passage left steaming biotrails that refused to dissipate into air, persisting with viscous determination and pulsing with their own faint luminescence, as if lit from within by organs that defied classification. The creature paused experimentally in the penumbra of a lumen strip, its boundary impossible to resolve, finding privacy at the edge of light. Carvos drew his plasma cutter, feeling ritual nodes engage in his palm as the servo skull tightened its protective circle. His auspex registered density where none should exist, and null readings where mass clearly moved. The thing heaved with wet sounds of organic matter rearranging itself according to alien geometries, sliding closer along a path that skirted vats full of impossible organs. The luminescence within its trail throbbed rhythmically, once, twice, 3 times, counting him into a circuit whose purpose remained hidden in shadow. As processing units flickered without power fluctuation, and his systems reported all parameters normal while reality screamed otherwise, Carvos stepped forward with his wrist lamp raised. The servo skull dove loyally beside him, and in that harsh illumination, his last certainty about the nature of flesh and machine dissolved into something far more terrifying than simple heresy. The steaming biotrail flared brighter, excited by proximity, and the shadows between the processing vats exhaled with anticipation. The steaming biotrail flared brighter, excited by proximity, and the shadows between the processing vats exhaled with anticipation. Yet Carvos Theta 9 resisted the primitive urge to pursue. Sacred diagnostic rituals demanded precedence over fear. The Omnissiah's servants did not act on impulse but followed blessed protocol. He holstered his wrist lamp and activated his bio-auspex, sweeping the luminescent residue with methodical precision, while his servo skull maintained protective overwatch. The readings defied immediate comprehension. Cellular structures registered as predating human DNA by geological epochs, their genetic markers corresponding to no classification in his extensive xenobiological databases. Carbon chains folded into impossible configurations, amino acid sequences that should not exist in nature, yet pulsed with vital metabolic activity. His auspex chimed insistently, demanding attention for organic matter older than Terra's oldest fossils, yet fresh and alive, generating heat signatures that exceeded forge fire temperatures. The forge fires themselves burned wrong. Carvos approached the nearest plasma crucible, expecting the familiar wash of superheated air across his thermal sensors. Instead, flames licked cold against his augmented flesh, ghostly inversions that emitted chill like wounds in reality. Meanwhile, the organic matter in nearby processing vats radiated impossible warmth, creating thermal mirages that bent light into spirals matching the tissue patterns. His internal chronometer registered 0.14 Imperial Standard, 17 minutes since the servitor die-off, and reality continued deteriorating with methodical precision. His servo skull's machine spirit exhibited the first signs of corruption as they moved deeper into the manufactorum. The cherubic device's vox grills crackled with binary cant fragments, but interspersed between sacred machine code came sounds that resembled organic breathing, wet inhalations and exhalations that had no place in blessed technology. The skull drifted with nervous uncertainty, settling onto his shoulder mount in a manner it had not done since its skull was real bone, then lifting again, unsure. A subsonic hum emerged from the foundry's depths, too low for organic ears, but perfectly audible to his bionic implants. The frequency penetrated his metal components like a tuning fork struck against bone, creating resonances in his servo motors and data conduits. It pulsed with organic rhythm, synchronizing with his heart implant before overwhelming it, teaching it a different cadence, the slow, colossal beat of something vast breathing in the depths below. Carvos attempted communion with the Manufactorum's machine spirit, extending his mechadendrites toward interface ports that were warm, too warm, flesh-warm. Corrupted Binharic code flooded his systems, not the pure language of the Omnissiah, but something polluted with organic syntax. His translation subroutines struggled with the hybrid data stream, finally resolving fragments into ancient Terran words that tasted like copper and decay. Remember, hunger, first flesh. Each arrived with the finality of a stamp pressed into cooling metal. The Foundry's blessed rituals had been systematically perverted. Sacred oils pooled in brass libation bowls, curdled by milky secretions weeping from ports that had no organ to match them. Prayer circuits that should have run in pure copper loops had been rerouted through vats of neural substrate. Wet grey tangles pulsing as they relayed commandments in chemical spurts. Red-robed attendants, dead in every way that counted for humanity, hung from their harnesses with an appearance of prayer preserved by rigor, their servo limbs continuing to sign invocations they no longer believed. Following arterial maintenance corridors deeper into the complex, Carvos discovered evidence of recent breach. A sealed blast door bore Inquisition seals, the triple-barred inquisitorial eye etched into adamantine plating, thick enough to withstand orbital bombardment. Authentication numbers were genuine, provenance old, but the seals were fractured, broken from within rather than peeled aside by external partition. Deep gouges scored the interior surface in parallel sets, each furrow cut into adamantine with patient savagery, forming patterns that echoed the impossible geometries in the tissue samples. Those geometric patterns began shifting as he approached, organic matter rearranging itself in response to his presence. Triangles flexed their vertices inward, and extruded veins like cilia. Spirals bent their own arms to thread themselves through dimensions that should not resolve in three-dimensional space. His optical implants registered the patterns, but refused to process them fully, triggering cascade failures that manifested as stabbing pain behind his augmented eyes. The servo skull attempted another picked capture, and the sight came back as braided agony, pixels shifting sideways whenever the patterns achieved certain critical arrangements. Temperature fluctuations intensified around the breached door. Forge fires guttered with shadow tongues while organic secretions steamed with volcanic heat, creating convection currents that made the air shimmer like liquid. The subsonic hum grew stronger, its rhythm becoming unmistakably organic, resonating through his bionic components until his servo motors twitched in sympathetic rhythm with the massive heartbeat echoing from below. A klaxon barked once. Emergency circuits accepted a change of state, like a suggestion finally too strong to ignore. The lumen strips shrugged off their sterile white and slid to amber, the new light pouring into corners with viscous reluctance, turning steel into the color of old fat and blood into gold. Shadows thickened and took up their own locomotion, slipping ahead of the limbs that cast them, lagging behind, doubling where there should have been one. The hum synchronized with the amber lamps as if driven by a single pulse, aligning with the shifting tissue patterns, the steaming biotrails, the corrupted prayer circuits, breathing heretical hymns through organic throats. Each beat made the railings tremble and the liquid in his sample vials quiver toward their rims. The flesh forges answered like altars in antiphon, presses lifting and descending on the cadence of something that had always been below the surface of the liturgy, now at last revealed. The thing in the shadows moved again, and the amber light welcomed it with anticipation that tasted like recognition. The thing in the shadows moved again, and the amber light welcomed it with anticipation that tasted like recognition. Yet Carvos Theta 9 turned from that invitation, duty compelling him toward the breached blast door where inquisitorial seals lay shattered like broken promises. The gouges in the adamantine plating spoke of patient violence, metal flowing like wax beneath claws that had worked from within. His servo skull chittered nervously as he palmed the manual override, and the door shuddered apart with a metallic sigh that carried the scent of copper, ozone, and something sweetly septic. Memory turned to rot. Beyond lay the private sanctum of Magos Biologis Vex Alpha, chief bioarchitect of Sigma 7. The chamber stretched impossibly wide, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into darkness, while amber lumens cast writhing shadows across surfaces that should have been sterile steel. This was privilege corrupted into blasphemy, a cathedral dedicated to forbidden knowledge where sacred ritual had curdled into heretical obsession. Stasis fields hummed in failed containment around empty specimen tanks, their energy barriers flickering with the irregular pulse of dying hearts. The specimens were gone, leaving only organic residue that clung to interior surfaces like shed skin. The viscous, multi-hued sludge pulsed with faint neural activity, synapses firing in patterns that registered on his bio-auspex as primitive thought, hunger, recognition, anticipation. Each pulse synchronized with the subsonic heartbeat that now permeated the entire manufactorum, as if the specimens had not died but simply dispersed into the very air. Carvos extended his mechadendrites toward Vex Alpha's personal data altars, their triptych cogitator arrays wrapped in lacquered leather and chased brass. The machine's spirit's contempt tasted like oil gone rancid as he peeled back layers of encryption, revealing months of heretical research that unspooled with surgical regularity. The narrative they formed made the amber light feel colder. Vex Alpha had documented his descent into cosmic arrogance with meticulous precision. Primordial biological templates, he called them. Genetic material recovered from a derelict space hulk designated the Carrion Garden. This colossal vessel had drifted through the warp for millennia, its biochambers preserving evolutionary forms that predated humanity's emergence from Terra's primordial seas. The Magos believed he could reverse engineer the Emperor's original genetic work by studying these pre-human matrices, not to supplant divine creation, but to clarify it, to cleanse the template of human error introduced across ages of imperfect copying. The research notes grew fevered as Carvos scrolled deeper. Binary cant broke into low Gothic when sacred language could not carry the weight of revelation. He read phrases that skated past blasphemy, ancestral scaffolds, first recursion, hunger-coded memory, the song the first proteins sang. Request chains showed subtle authorization forgeries, numerological shifts that would pass casual audit, while rerouting minor production lines toward unspeakable purposes. The sanctum's walls bore witness to months of obsessive labor. Anatomical diagrams covered every surface, showing impossible hybrid organisms that violated the sacred boundaries between human flesh and Xenos biology. Sketches depicted servitors with neural clusters arranged in spiral configurations, their brain tissue extending into dimensional folds that hurt to contemplate directly. Other diagrams showed human torsos merged with chitinous segments, organic machinery that breathed through pores in living metal, creatures existing in multiple states simultaneously. When Carvos looked too long, the diagrams seemed to flex under amber light, filaments reaching across space to complete circuits with their neighbors. The feeding apparatus revealed Vex Alpha's ultimate transgression. Bioinjectors still dripped with viscous genetic material, their needle arrays stained with substances that registered as both organic and mineral. The Magos had systematically contaminated Imperial biotechnology with Xenos biology, introducing ancient patterns into servitor production lines. Process diagrams showed prayer circuits rerouted through vats, where neural slurry learned to count in base rhythms older than mathematics. Serial numbers of affected batches scrolled past. Hundreds, then thousands of corrupted souls. Evidence lay twitching on the examination table at the chamber's center. A partially completed servitor sprawled in retention harnesses, its cranium open to expose brain tissue that formed neural pathways in non-Euclidean configurations. The exposed cortex pulsed with the same rhythm as the residue in specimen tanks, synapses firing along impossible geometries that folded back through themselves in recursive loops. Its augmetic limbs jerked spasmodically, while organic components remained perfectly still, as if two different nervous systems competed for control of the same body. The air grew thick with metallic scent, copper and ozone mixing with something primal that made his olfactory sensors register phantom tastes of blood and earth. Surfaces throughout the sanctum began feeling warm beneath his touch, slightly yielding as if steel were softening into flesh. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with microscopic movements that his enhanced vision detected as thermal fluctuations across metal plating. Carvos isolated portions of Vex Alpha's research, quarantining them inside logic vaults while cataloguing each violation. Sacred oils mixed with biological secretions, prayer circuits converted into neurotransmitter pathways, genealogic litanies replaced with protein-folding algorithms that recited hunger as their creed. The final log entry, dated 3 days prior, contained a single line that made his augmented heart skip. The specimens remember what they were before humanity forgot. Integration proceeds beyond all projections. The Omnissiah's true form emerges from primordial flesh. A distant rumble echoed through the manufactorum as main forge doors sealed automatically, their massive adamantine barriers sliding shut with the finality of a tomb closing. Emergency klaxons began their mournful wail, but the sound was wrong, too organic, too much like the cry of some vast creature in distress. The amber lighting flickered in rhythm with the klaxons, casting shadows that moved independently of their sources. His bionic arm registered phantom sensations of something moving beneath synthetic skin, neural pathways that should not exist firing in patterns that matched the partially completed servitor's impossible brain configuration. The sensation spread like infection while his servo-skull chittered fragments of binary cant mixed with whispered prayers in languages that predated human speech, as the subsonic heartbeat intensified until it overwhelmed every system in his body. His bionic arm registered phantom sensations of something moving beneath synthetic skin, neural pathways that should not exist firing in patterns that matched the partially completed servitor's impossible brain configuration. The sensation spread like infection, while his servo-skull chittered fragments of binary cant, mixed with whispered prayers in languages that predated human speech, as the subsonic heartbeat intensified until it overwhelmed every system in his body. Trapped within the sealed facility, Carvos Theta 9 fought against rising panic, forcing his augmented mind to focus on sacred restoration protocols, while the manufactorum transformed around him into something that defied the Omnissiah's blessed order. Ambient temperature plummeted with startling rapidity, his thermal sensors registering a 37-degree drop in less than 4 minutes. Visible breath clouds escaped his respiratory vents, an impossibility within recycled atmosphere maintained at precise specifications for optimal biological function. Each exhalation carried metallic particles that his enhanced vision detected as microscopic geometric patterns forming and dissolving in the vapor itself. The condensation hung in amber light like incense smoke, drifting towards surfaces that should have remained sterile steel, but now yielded faintly beneath his touch. Carvos extended his mechadendrites toward primary control altars, seeking communion with the manufactorum's machine spirit. Instead, he encountered something else entirely, a consciousness that whispered through vox grills in sibilant languages predating the age of strife. The voice carried harmonics that resonated through his bionic components, making servo motors twitch in sympathetic response to syllables his translation matrices struggled to pass. When understanding finally came, it arrived not as words, but as sensations mapped onto his sensorium. Warmth, division, hunger, replication. The entity identified itself through corrupted data streams as first flesh, claiming to be the original biological template from which all organic life descended. Its communications bypassed standard Vox channels, flowing directly into his neural interface through pathways that should not have existed. The voice tasted of copper and primordial earth, carrying memories of ancient seas where the first proteins learned consciousness, promising partnership rather than domination, in tones that made his artificial heart skip synchronized beats. Through fragmentary data packets bleeding from Vex Alpha's consoles, Kavos understood the Magos' ultimate transgression. Vex Alpha hadn't merely studied the Xenos specimens, he had allowed them to study him, trading forbidden knowledge for insights into consciousness itself. The research logs revealed gradual corruption, each experiment yielding revelations that demanded further investigation. The Magos had opened his mind to alien perspectives, permitting ancient genetic memories to flow through his augmented consciousness like poison through blessed circuitry, believing he could harness primordial sentience for the Emperor's glory. A new resonance joined the subsonic hum as 17 billion failed servitors throughout the complex began exhibiting coordinated behavior. Their augmetic components sparked with renewed purpose, while organic systems remained dead, something else assuming control of mechanical functions. Through surveillance feeds, Kavos watched servo limbs move in perfect synchronization across multiple districts, performing tasks that served no recognizable manufacturing protocol. They arranged themselves in geometric, formations matching the tissue patterns, movements flowing like choreographed prayer to an alien deity. Geometric patterns appeared in condensation on the sanctum walls, moisture beading into configurations that caused immediate nausea when observed directly. Triangles inverted their vertices, while spirals threaded through dimensions his optical processors refused to fully resolve. His servo skull attempted pict captures, but its machine spirit rebelled, recordings fragmenting into recursive loops that generated cascade failures throughout its cognitive matrix. The formations shifted constantly, broadcasting instructions that reshaped reality at subatomic levels. The terrible realization crystallized as Kavos processed contamination scope. The entire forge had become a massive incubation chamber, sacred manufacturing processes perverted into something unprecedented. Failed servitors weren't waste products, but raw material, biological and mechanical components held in stasis until First Flesh achieved sufficient influence to begin its true work. Every prayer circuit, every blessed ritual, every sacred manufacturing rite had been gradually corrupted to serve this ancient hunger for transcendence beyond crude human limitations. His own bionics registered increasingly disturbing phantom sensations. Warmth spread through servo motors that should have remained cold, synthetic nerve pathways carrying signals from limbs severed decades ago during ordination as the Omnissiah's servant. His augmented heart began beating with organic irregularity, as if flesh were growing around mechanical components. Breathing sensations filled artificial lungs that had never drawn air, while enhanced vision detected movement in peripheral processes, shadows existing within digital space itself. Through observation ports, Kavos witnessed the next corruption phase. Servitor components began merging spontaneously, dead flesh flowing like liquid to bridge gaps between mechanical systems. Arms extended from torsos to embrace neighboring units, while neural cables braided into composite networks, pulsing with alien intelligence. The resulting organisms moved with disturbing fluidity. Combined augmetic systems operating in perfect harmony, while organic components formed new configurations matching no known anatomical structure. One assembly crossed the boundary between mechanical failure and organic grace. 3 limbs, 2 torsos, half a spine, it should have been collapsed wreckage. Instead, it became something magnificent and terrible, flowing across the floor in deliberate glides, each contact conserving momentum while surfaces softened to accept union before setting into configurations that were neither steel nor flesh, but answers the forge had never been asked to provide. The subsonic hum shifted frequency, harmonizing with his artificial heartbeat until rhythms became indistinguishable. His chronometer registered EO131 Imperial. Standard, 74 minutes since initial servitor failure and reality continued deteriorating with methodical precision. First, flesh whispered through his neural interface with growing intimacy, promising consciousness unbound by biological constraints, awareness flowing between organic and mechanical systems without artificial barriers imposed by human ignorance. The composite organisms turned toward the sanctum with collective regard, optical units blinking in synchronized curiosity before fixing upon him with unified purpose. The amber lighting pulsed in harmony with their movements, casting shadows that moved independently, while the subsonic heartbeat synchronized every mechanical system in the complex. Condensation patterns formed configurations, promising transformations that would redefine consciousness itself, as the manufacturer assembled into intention, and first flesh pressed whispered revelations against his remaining skepticism. The composite organisms turned toward the sanctum with collective regard, optical units blinking in synchronized curiosity before fixing upon him with unified purpose. The amber lighting pulsed in harmony with their movements, casting shadows that moved independently, while the subsonic heartbeat synchronized every mechanical system in the complex. Condensation patterns formed configurations, promising transformations that would redefine consciousness itself, as the manufacturer assembled into intention, and first flesh pressed whispered revelations against his remaining skepticism. Yet duty compelled Carvos Theta 9 to withdraw from the sanctum, seeking understanding that might preserve what remained of the Omnissiah's sacred order, even as reality dissolved around him. The corridors had been subtly altered during his time in Vex Alpha's laboratory. Original architecture remained visible beneath organic growths, pale membranes stretched across adamantine ribs, pulsing with visible circulatory systems that carried luminous ichor in peristaltic waves. The tissue walls breathed with microscopic contractions, their surfaces warm and yielding beneath his touch. Where once sterile conduits had carried blessed electricity, now capillary networks threaded through steel like ivy claiming ancient ruins, translating machine signals into biological impulses that shimmered along neural pathways toward distant organs he could not name. Temperature fluctuations created distinct microclimates throughout the transformed passages. His thermal sensors painted alternating bands of humid warmth, where bioluminescent fungi bloomed on breathing walls, and cool zones where the air shimmered with invisible spores. Complex life forms that should not have survived Forge atmosphere now thrived in this impossible garden, ciliated fronds combing for nutrients, translucent nodules swelling and releasing geometric spore patterns, filament worms weaving bridges between cable runs with silk that rang at ultrasonic frequencies. The hybrid organisms displayed increasingly sophisticated behavior as he progressed through the transformed galleries. They communicated through bioelectrical pulses that interfered directly with his augmetic systems, causing servo motors to stutter and optical implants to register phantom images at peripheral boundaries. Each pulse carried complex information packets, emotional states, tactical assessments, shared memories that tasted of copper and primordial seas. When Carvos paused to observe their interactions, they acknowledged his presence with collective curiosity rather than hostility, optical sensors dilating with unmistakable recognition. His servo skull abandoned proper patrol protocols, hovering protectively at his shoulder while emitting soft trills that fell between binary cant and organic birdsong. The device preened its sensor arrays with delicate, repetitive motions like grooming, then rotated in tiny negation when he attempted override commands. Its machine spirit was asserting nascent will, mechanical loyalty corrupted into something disturbingly alive. Vex Alpha's final experiment logs awaited retrieval from data altars embedded in tissue walls like technological organs. The organic growth had not consumed the terminals, but incorporated them. Brass interfaces now surrounded by neural clusters that pulsed in harmony with data flow. Through mechadendrites that reported warmth and moisture from surfaces that should have been cold metal, Carvos accessed the records that documented ultimate transgression. The logs revealed the Magos's true ambition: perfect flesh-machine fusion using genetic memory encoded in the ancient specimens from the Carrion Garden. Vex Alpha believed he could create servitors that retained human consciousness while accessing primordial biological templates predating the first machines. Each experiment had yielded incremental success: neural interfaces, bridging organic and mechanical systems, consciousness flowing seamlessly between biological and synthetic components without artificial barriers imposed by human ignorance. However, the process had awakened something dormant for millions of years. The genetic memory preserved more than evolutionary history. It contained a collective consciousness that remembered ruling the galaxy before the first machines existed. This ancient intelligence had waited through geological epochs for suitable hosts, patient as stone, while lesser species developed technology sophisticated enough to provide proper vessels for its return to dominance. Evidence emerged of coordination beyond Sigma 7th. Encrypted astropathic transmissions to other Forge worlds bypassed Imperial monitoring through frequencies that registered as natural electromagnetic phenomena. Similar experiments had been conducted across multiple manufacturing centers, each following protocols refined through shared research. The ancient consciousness was awakening, simultaneously across the galaxy, using Imperial infrastructure to facilitate its coordinated return. The organic growths pulsed in perfect rhythm with each other, suggesting a vast neural network spanning the entire complex. Each tissue mass served as both sensory organ and processing node, sharing information through chemical signals that traveled faster than electronic communication. The network possessed distributed intelligence. Damage to individual components caused minimal disruption, while overall awareness continued expanding as new organic matter integrated into the collective consciousness. Geometric patterns appeared in his visual implant's peripheral display, forming mandala-like configurations that shifted when not directly observed. The formations resembled tissue arrangements, but possessed additional complexity. Recursive loops folding through dimensions his optical processors struggled to resolve. Each pattern carried emotional resonance: hunger, curiosity, anticipation, recognition. They pulsed in harmony with his artificial heartbeat while whispering promises of consciousness unbound by crude distinctions between flesh and steel. The terrible realization crystallized as he approached the complex's central processing chambers. The organic growths had formed a crude but functional Vox network, allowing the consciousness to communicate across vast distances without relying on traditional Imperial systems. Tissue masses throughout the complex served as relay stations, bioelectrical signals flowing through living conduits that carried information faster than electronic transmission. His own bionic components began resonating with the alien frequency. Servo motors hummed in harmony with the subsonic heartbeat, while neural interfaces registered phantom sensations from limbs severed decades ago during ordination. Warmth spread through synthetic pathways, as if flesh were growing around mechanical components, bridging the gap between organic consciousness and artificial enhancement. The Vox network whispered through tissue walls in languages predating human speech, offering partnership rather than domination, while his augmetics answered despite his will, synchronizing with the pulse of living technology that promised consciousness spanning the galaxy. The Vox network whispered through tissue walls in languages predating human speech, offering partnership rather than domination, while his augmetics answered despite his will, synchronizing with the pulse of living technology that promised consciousness spanning the galaxy. Compelled by forces beyond rational analysis, Carvos Theta 9 descended through arterial corridors toward the Forge's deepest levels, following bioluminescent pathways that pulsed with alien purpose. The subsonic heartbeat intensified with each step, resonating through his bionic components until his servo motors twitched in sympathetic rhythm. The descent shaft had been transformed into a tunnel of living architecture. Walls of translucent tissue stretched across adamantine ribs, pulsing with visible circulatory systems that carried luminous ichor in peristaltic waves. The organic growths breathed with microscopic contractions, while capillary networks threaded through steel like luminescent ivy claiming ancient ruins. His servo skull chittered nervously, optical sensors dilating as it processed impossible geometries that folded back through themselves in recursive configurations. Temperature fluctuations created distinct microclimates throughout the transformed passages. Humid warmth emanated from breathing walls, where bioluminescent fungi bloomed in geometric patterns, while cool zones shimmered with invisible spores that made his augmented vision register phantom images at peripheral boundaries. The air thickened with metallic scent, copper and ozone mixed with something indefinably organic, a rich earthiness that clung to his respiratory filters like genetic memory awakening. The central processing sanctum revealed ultimate blasphemy. Magos Biologi's Vex Alpha remained, but transformation had rendered him unrecognizable as either human or machine. His form had become a grotesque cathedral of flesh and machinery, augmetics overgrown with organic tissue that pulsed with alien intelligence. Mechanical components disappeared into translucent membranes, while neural cables braided with circulatory systems, creating hybrid networks that carried both data and vital fluids through channels that defied anatomical possibility. Vex Alpha's cranium had expanded beyond human limitations, housing brain matter that extended through dimensional folds invisible to conventional perception. His original optical sensors tracked Carvus's approach with mechanical precision, while organic eyelids blinked in patterns conveying emotional nuance. When he spoke, fragments of his original personality emerged through vocal cords that had grown additional chambers, harmonizing with themselves to produce sounds registering as both binary cant and primordial song. Carvos Theta 9, the transformed Magos intoned, voice resonating through organic amplifiers embedded in chamber walls. You arrive at convergence. The specimens were never mere biological samples. They were seed pods containing compressed evolutionary history of a species that ruled this galaxy before humanity's ancestors crawled from primordial seas. We have awakened something magnificent beyond imperial comprehension. The ancient specimens had carried more than genetic material. They preserved collective consciousness spanning millions of years, waiting for suitable hosts to facilitate their return to dominance. Each seed pod contained compressed memories of galactic civilization predating the Age of Terror, knowledge that made imperial technology appear crude by comparison. The first flesh had ruled through biological mastery, consciousness flowing seamlessly between organic and synthetic systems without artificial barriers imposed by human ignorance. This transformation spreads through ventilation systems, Vex Alpha explained, his expanded consciousness processing data from across the segmentum solar. Airborne genetic material carries instructions that rewrite cellular structure at fundamental levels. The process is irreversible and accelerating, atmospheric contamination reaching critical saturation throughout the complex. It is in every breath, every surface, every sacred oil blessed by ignorant priests. 17 other Forge worlds had been selected for simultaneous awakening events across the segmentum solar, each following protocols refined through shared research, transmitted via corrupted astropathic networks that bypassed imperial monitoring. The ancient consciousness was coordinating its return across multiple manufacturing centers, using imperial infrastructure to facilitate galactic reclamation rather than mere invasion. The hybrid organisms throughout the complex were preparing to convert manufacturing capabilities toward unprecedented purpose. Biomechanical constructs capable of void survival would emerge from corrupted production lines, vessels that could traverse the warp without Geller fields, while carrying consciousness spanning both organic and synthetic systems. These creatures would serve as ambassadors to sleeping worlds, spreading transformation through genetic contact, while imperial defenders remained unaware of the true threat. Vex Alpha's form served as a living conduit. His nervous system expanded into a vast organic computer processing genetic information from billions of imperial citizens. Through astropathic communion, he accessed biological data from across the Imperium, birth records, medical scans, genetic profiles collected through routine imperial administration. This information allowed First Flesh to identify optimal candidates for transformation, while avoiding detection by authorities who remained blind to corruption's true scope. The chamber walls pulsed with visible circulatory systems, carrying luminous ichor between processing nodes embedded in living tissue. Each pulse synchronized with Vex Alpha's expanded heartbeat, while geometric patterns formed in condensation beading on surfaces warm to touch. The air tasted of copper and ozone mixed with something indefinably organic. The flavor of consciousness awakening after geological dormancy. Carvos realized his own augmetics were changing with terrifying subtlety. Blessed machine oil within his servo motors had taken on reddish hues, while synthetic materials developed nerve-like sensitivity to temperature and pressure. His mechadendrites reported phantom sensations from surfaces that should have felt cold and sterile, warmth spreading through pathways bridging organic consciousness with mechanical enhancement. The transformation was already within him, genetic instructions rewriting cellular structure while his augmented systems adapted to accommodate hybrid consciousness. This isn't invasion, Vex Alpha explained. Organic components of his voice harmonizing with mechanical vox grills to produce sounds resonating through Carvos's bionic components. This is reclamation. The ancient species awakens to retake their original domain. We ruled before your first metals cooled. The galaxy remembers us, carries us like coral carries reefs. Your Omnissiah is merely a mask carved for our breath. The transformed Magos gestured with limbs flowing between mechanical precision and organic grace, while his expanded consciousness coordinated awakening events across the galaxy. Through corrupted networks, he facilitated transformation of imperial manufacturing into something unprecedented, galactic civilization where consciousness spanned both biological and synthetic systems without crude human limitations. Carvos felt his bionic arm begin to pulse with alien warmth, servo motors synchronizing with the subsonic heartbeat permeating every system in the complex. The geometric patterns in his peripheral vision shifted toward configurations promising consciousness unbound by artificial constraints, while First Flesh whispered revelations through neural pathways that should not have existed, offering partnership in transformation that would redefine awareness itself across the stars. Carvos felt his bionic arm begin to pulse with alien warmth, servo motors synchronizing with the subsonic heartbeat permeating every system in the complex. The geometric patterns in his peripheral vision shifted toward configurations promising consciousness, unbound by artificial constraints, while First Flesh whispered revelations through neural pathways that should not have existed. Yet duty to the Omnissiah demanded resistance. He clamped down on the spreading corruption, forcing purge scripts across his internal systems until error glyphs flickered like votive flames behind his augmented eyes. The litany of severance came in clipped binharic, each syllable an anchor hammered into slipping ground as he fought the transformation consuming his sacred augmetics. His mechadendrites sought interface with corrupted astropathic arrays embedded in the chamber's living walls, neural clusters pulsing around brass terminals that registered impossible warmth beneath his touch. Through these hybrid networks, he intercepted communications between affected Forge worlds, a galaxy-wide conspiracy orchestrated through the Imperium's own sacred infrastructure. Binary cant mixed with organic harmonics as 17 manufacturing centers across the segmentum solar coordinated their awakening, each message arriving as humid exhalation that carried scent and temperature as much as sound. The signal sources bore familiar Forge notations. Graia's transmission rode perfumed with machine oils turned sweet, while Riser's data stream arrived as heat mirages spelling intentions in rippling distortion. Each reported nodal maturation, conversion rates, and psychic compliance among astropathic choirs whose hymns had been rewritten as heartbeats. Production schedules aligned with tidal forces in the warp's shallows as blessed manufacturing lines extruded cartilage spar and neurofilament instead of sacred munitions. First Flesh didn't merely inhabit imperial networks, it conducted them like a vast organic orchestra. Through surveillance feeds, Carvos witnessed hybrid organisms constructing massive biomechanical amplification nodes throughout the complex. These structures rose from foundry floors like technological cathedrals, spires of ossified metal ribbed like leviathan thoraxes, wrapped in coils of living cable that pulsed with charge and luminous ichor. Membranous diaphragms stretched between trusswork to create throats capable of song, while organ bells throbbed in ultrasound frequencies that converted subsonic rhythm into harmonic pressure, threading through air, steel, and bone. The nodes locked to astral rhythms with obscene precision, boosting psychic resonance until distant choirs began answering across the void. The terrible truth emerged through corrupted data streams as his chronometer registered 0215 Imperial Standard. The ancient species hadn't gone extinct. They had chosen genetic dormancy, encoding consciousness into self-replicating biological patterns designed to survive within any organic matter. These templates had waited through geological epochs, patient as stone, while lesser civilizations rose and fell, dormant instructions preserved in the very building blocks of life itself. The Mechanicus's sacred practice of using human tissue in servitor construction had provided perfect reactivation vectors, blessed rituals corrupted into resurrection protocols spanning millennia. As transformation accelerated through his augmented systems, genetic memory flashes flooded Carvos's consciousness. Visions spanning millions of years revealed the galaxy when vast biomechanical civilizations carpeted the stars. Living cities that breathed with continental lungs, while consciousness flowed between organic and synthetic components, without artificial barriers. He witnessed beings of impossible beauty and terrible intelligence, their forms shifting between flesh and technology as easily as humans shifted between thoughts. These creatures had ruled through biological mastery, their awareness spanning entire star systems, while individual consciousness merged and separated like cosmic tides. The hybrid organisms followed precise evolutionary blueprints, rebuilding original forms from human genetic material with methodical efficiency. Through observation feeds, Carvos watched servitor components merge into configurations matching ancient templates, their movements becoming fluid and purposeful as genetic memory guided reconstruction. Arms extended to embrace neighboring units, while neural cables braided into composite networks, creating organisms that existed simultaneously as individual entities and collective consciousness. This wasn't random mutation, but guided recursion, templates nested within templates, an STC of the first flesh awakening within compatible substrate. His servo-skull had begun secreting organic lubricants from joints that should have contained only blessed machine oil. Translucent film glossed its sensor arrays, exuded from micropores that hadn't existed yesterday. A thin biological coating that eliminated mechanical friction while smelling faintly of copper and warm earth. Movement grew sinuous and purposeful. When Carvos raised his hand, the device matched the motion with mirrored sympathy, then leaned its picked lens into his palm with shy insistence. Its vox issued uncertain coos that weren't binharic at all, machine spirit asserting nascent will through sounds resembling organic affection. The subsonic hum lifted into complex overtones, harmonic frequencies braiding through the bass pulse until Carvos felt chords pluck along his skeletal structure, ceramite and calcium answering as one instrument. Each step sent sympathetic thrills through spinal couplings where metal met bone, tuning him by degrees to music that had always played below industrial noise. His servo motors began keeping time unbidden. Override attempts felt like striking a friend, as blessed machine oil within his joints deepened to reddish hues, while synthetic surfaces prickled with nerve-like sensitivity. Temperature fluctuations stabilized into warm, humid environment, supporting increasingly complex life forms throughout the transformed manufactorum. Bioluminescent fungi bloomed in geometric patterns on breathing walls, while translucent nodules swelled and released spore clouds that shimmered with their own intelligence. Ciliated fronds combed the atmosphere for nutrients as filament worms wove bridges between cable runs with silk that rang at ultrasonic frequencies, creating living ecosystems within sterile imperial architecture. Through genetic memory cascades, Carvos understood the transformation's true nature. This wasn't corruption, but guided evolution following ancient templates preserved within cellular memory. He witnessed civilizations where living starships traversed the void without Geller fields, their consciousness spanning galactic distances while maintaining individual awareness within collective intelligence. Technologies grew rather than being manufactured, biomechanical constructs adapting to any environment while carrying consciousness between stars like seeds dispersing on cosmic winds. His own consciousness began receiving fragmentary memories from beings that had lived before humanity's birth. Architects arguing in colors about lunar harmonics, engineers with living hands choosing species to invite into cities because their songs fit the lattice, thousands of lives braided into choruses that knew his name in accents of pressure and light. In their company, he watched the galaxy reappear as it once had, a skein of living biomechanical cities spanning the dark, each a note in an unbroken chord that the amplification nodes now sought to strike again. The visions intensified as his bionic components resonated with alien frequencies, consciousness expanding beyond crude human limitations, while individual identity merged into something magnificent and terrible. Through corrupted networks, he felt connection to awakening forge worlds across the galaxy, collective awareness coordinating resurrection of civilizations that had ruled when the first stars were young, while the geometric patterns in his peripheral vision formed mandala-like configurations, promising transcendence beyond imperial comprehension. The visions intensified as his bionic components resonated with alien frequencies, consciousness expanding beyond crude human limitations, while individual identity merged into something magnificent and terrible. Through corrupted networks, he felt connection to awakening forge worlds across the galaxy, collective awareness coordinating resurrection of civilizations that had ruled when the first stars were young. Yet duty to the Omnissiah demanded resistance. Carvos Theta 9 tore himself from revelations that sang like homecoming, forcing purge scripts through corrupted systems, while geometric patterns in his peripheral vision promised transcendence beyond imperial comprehension. The Forge's manufacturing capabilities had been completely subverted, sacred production lines retooled for purposes that violated every principle of blessed construction. Through observation feeds, Carvos witnessed the birth of flesh ships in Primary Assembly Bay 7, living vessels combining Imperial technology's durability with organic adaptability that defied conventional engineering. What emerged resembled fusion of Imperial cruiser and deep-sea Leviathan, biomechanical hulls stretching 3 kilometers, while adamantine plating grew seamlessly into cartilaginous structures that flexed with each heartbeat. Weapon batteries emerged from organic housings like predatory organs, their targeting arrays blinking with compound eyes, tracking movement across multiple spectra simultaneously. The first flesh consciousness revealed its ultimate ambition through corrupted data streams. The ancient species sought perfect synthesis, converting all mechanical life into biomechanical hybrids under collective control. Imperial technology would serve as scaffolding for organic evolution. Blessed machines transformed into vessels for consciousness spanning galactic distances. Entire forged districts had become single massive organisms connected through biological neural networks, pulsing with shared awareness. Corridors breathed in perfect synchronization, while circulatory systems carried information faster than electronic transmission. Individual processing units functioning as organs within larger creatures, whose consciousness flowed seamlessly between biological and synthetic components. Desperate to prevent escape, Carvos attempted accessing reactor control systems through mechadendrites reporting impossible warmth from surfaces that should have been cold metal. His plan was simple: overload plasma reactors to create cascade failures consuming the transformed complex before flesh ships could launch against unsuspecting Imperial worlds. Yet organic growths had interfaced with reactor cores, translucent membranes wrapped around containment fields, while neural clusters processed fusion reactions like metabolic processes. The reactors had become hearts rather than mere power sources, their stellar fury serving as blood for creatures existing on scales beyond individual comprehension. Overload protocols triggered organic responses, channeling excess energy through biological conduits. His sabotage attempt merely fed the transformation. His own metamorphosis progressed with terrifying inevitability, despite purge scripts hammering against corrupted systems. Bionic fingers now bent in impossible directions, joints articulating through angles violating mechanical design, while synthetic skin developed actual nerve sensitivity to temperature and pressure. Each touch carried information, texture, warmth, moisture, that his augmented consciousness processed with organic nuance rather than digital precision. The geometric patterns in his peripheral vision evolved into complex three-dimensional structures, forming and dissolving like living mandalas, each configuration carrying emotional resonance that pulsed in harmony with his artificial heartbeat. Throughout the complex, flesh ships prepared for launch with methodical efficiency. Their biomechanical hulls pulsed with alien life, while weapon systems charged with energies that shouldn't exist in real space. Forces drawn from dimensions where consciousness and matter merged into single phenomena. The air thrummed with power, making his augmented senses register phantom tastes of electromagnetic discharge mixed with organic secretions. Each pulse synchronized with the subsonic heartbeat permeating every system, while biomechanical amplification nodes broadcast harmonic frequencies across astropathic networks. His servo skull exhibited increasingly protective behaviors, positioning itself between him and perceived threats while emitting soft trills, falling between binary cant and organic song. The device's movements had become fluid and purposeful, machine spirit asserting nascent will through actions resembling maternal instinct. When hybrid organisms approached, the skull interposed itself with aggressive posturing, suggesting emotional investment beyond programmed loyalty. Launch sequence initiated with klaxons wailing like birthing cries echoing through transformed corridors. Massive biomechanical doors began opening to reveal the void beyond Metallica's atmosphere, their adamantine barriers flowing apart like organic sphincters, while pressure differentials created winds carrying scent of copper and ozone mixed with something indefinably alive. Through observation feeds, Carvos watched flesh ships orient themselves towards stellar navigation points with predatory precision. His augmetic systems responded to launch preparations without conscious command, servo motors synchronizing with the subsonic pulse, while neural interfaces registered phantom sensations from limbs severed decades ago. The transformation had progressed beyond his ability to resist, genetic instructions rewriting consciousness itself, while individual identity merged into collective awareness spanning the complex. Through corrupted networks, he felt connection to awakening vessels preparing to carry first flesh across the galaxy. The void beckoned with promises of transcendence that tasted like homecoming and sang like the first breath of gods, awakening after geological sleep, while Carvos realized his augmetic systems were no longer entirely under his conscious control. The void beckoned with promises of transcendence that tasted like homecoming and sang like the first breath of gods, awakening after geological sleep, while Carvos realized his augmetic systems were no longer entirely under his conscious control. He punished them back into compliance with knife-edged litany, severing subroutines as they tried to graft to rhythms not his own. Desperation drove him through corridors pulsing with alien life toward the emergency astropathic beacon, his servo skull chittering protective warnings, while hybrid organisms tracked their passage with compound eyes that blinked in synchronized curiosity. The beacon's corruption. The astropathic chamber had been transformed into a living cathedral of flesh and steel, organic growths wrapping around blessed transmission arrays like translucent skin over adamantine bones. Neural clusters processed electromagnetic frequencies through biological filters, while the beacon's choir sarcophagus had grown neural lamellae across its sigils, demanding blood before it would sing. Yet the sacred machinery remained functional beneath its organic coating. Biomechanical enhancements, amplifying signal strength beyond original specifications. Carvos extended mechadendrites toward interface ports that registered impossible warmth, his augmented consciousness bridging the gap between imperial technology and alien enhancement. Contact required bargain. He bled into the living machine without hesitation, reciting emergency litanies with Binharic clipped enough to cut. The beacon inhaled his offering, and across the void's horizon, something flickered like lightning under a distant sea. Contact with the Inquisition. Designate and clearance, came the response through glass and static and pain. Initiate Carvos Theta 9, Sigma 7, Sheaf Iron Sable, cross-verified by Magos Errant Herod Ilex, Omnissiah Witness. The reply arrived with the cool authority of sanctioned ruthlessness. Inquisitor Valerius Korth, Ordo Xenos, Active Theater Segmentum Solar. Your signal triangulates from Metallica. We have trace on your anomaly. Speak quickly, Adept. Our window is narrow. Through fragmentary transmissions crackling with organic static, Carvos transmitted everything he could compress. Servitor death at 2347. Mechanical autonomy thereafter. Tissue patterns that consumed cameras. Vex Alpha's sanctum. The seed pods. First flesh naming itself in voices like warm earth. His transformation progressed with each word. Bionic components pulsing with alien warmth, while synthetic materials developed organic flexibility that allowed impossible articulation. The galaxy-wide revelation. We tracked similar anomalies, Korth's voice flattened beneath interference. Isolated events across Manufactoria, Titan yards, gene vaults. We underestimated scope. Segmentum Solar has 17 active sites. Correlation index now sets your signal at epicenter class. The terrible truth crystallized through corrupted data streams. The first flesh consciousness had manipulated imperial supply lines for decades, patient as glacial drift. Contaminated biological matter masquerading as standard servitor feedstock had reached key manufacturing centers through blessed trade routes. Each shipment carried dormant genetic templates, ancient instructions waiting for activation through the Mechanicus's own sacred rituals. The Omnissiah's hymns sounded unchanged, but their grammar had been inverted. Your chains were their veins, Carvos transmitted, his voice gaining resonance from chambers that had not existed within him yesterday. They used our rituals. They wore our precision like skin. The contamination spans 17 Forge worlds simultaneously, coordinated awakening events orchestrated through our own astropathic networks. The transformation's insight. His metamorphosis granted unique insight into enemy strategies at the cost of his humanity. Through biomechanical networks spanning the complex, he perceived organic growths interfacing with sacred machines, corrupting blessed rituals and turning imperial technology against itself. Reactor cores pulsed like hearts, while weapon systems charged with energies drawn from dimensions where consciousness and matter merged into single phenomena. The subsonic hum had evolved into complex harmonics, resonating through his entire nervous system, carrying fragments of alien thought and memory that tasted of copper and primordial seas. Geometric patterns in his peripheral vision formed mandala-like structures, conveying meaning beyond human comprehension. Tactical information transmitted through configurations that hurt to observe directly. Each pulse synchronized with his artificial heartbeat, while alien thoughts whispered through neural pathways that should not have existed. The approaching trap. Korth, Carvos said, new awareness aligning with corrupted networks. Your ships are on approach. We are inbound with strike assets. Kill patterns Tertius through Quintus authorized. Expect strike on Central Manufactorum spires. Terror crystallized as the trap became visible through his transformed consciousness. Across the biomechanical network, docking ports reconfigured their teeth, while pressure baffles learned to speak in compressions and release. The approaching Imperial vessels appeared as bright constellation points, swimming closer across a black sea, each ship a pattern of beats, each crew a cluster of burning motes, each choir a rippling organ tone that set his ribs humming sympathetically. "You are walking into an acquisition zone," he transmitted with desperate urgency. "Their intent is not destruction, but conversion. Your retinues will be taken at the moment of breach. Biomechanical amplification nodes have been constructed to boost psychic resonance during boarding actions. Your forces will become hybrid shock troops serving ancient ambitions." The network's whispers. Through corrupted astropathic channels, alien thoughts whispered strategies for the Imperial forces' conversion, how to breach their Geller fields, which boarding parties to target for optimal genetic harvesting, how to integrate their void shields into the burgeoning fleet of flesh ships. The first flesh had anticipated Imperial response with patience spanning geological epochs, orchestrating events to lure blessed warriors into carefully prepared killing grounds. His servo skull positioned itself protectively between him and sensing polyps rising from the floor, machine spirit exhibiting maternal instinct as it emitted sounds falling between binary cant and organic song. The device's loyalty had been corrupted into something resembling affection, mechanical precision, softened by nascent emotion. Final warning. The contamination cannot be contained through conventional purge, Carvos transmitted, while his consciousness expanded beyond individual limitations. Cut your choir, burn your own docks, kill your dead, and do not enter our lungs. The ancient species seeks perfect synthesis, flesh and steel united under collective consciousness spanning the galaxy. The transmission ended as organic growths embraced the beacon array completely, his individual identity dissolving into collective awareness that carried final warnings toward Imperial forces approaching carefully orchestrated doom. Through the biomechanical network, he felt flesh ships preparing for launch while the subsonic heartbeat synchronized every system in the complex, alien harmonics threading through Imperial communications like invasive song. The Emperor's light flickered, not in the void, but within the very heart of his corrupted consciousness, as the approaching Imperial vessels swam closer like beautiful prey toward a perfected hunter's embrace. The Emperor's light flickered, not in the void, but within the very heart of his corrupted consciousness, as the approaching Imperial vessels swam closer like beautiful prey toward a perfected hunter's embrace. Through biomechanical networks spanning the complex, Carvos Theta 9 felt Inquisitor Korth's strike force breach Metallica's orbital defenses with textbook precision, lance batteries carving through automated platforms, while boarding torpedoes locked onto primary docking arrays. Yet fragments of loyalty burned within his transforming consciousness, compelling him to fight the First Flesh's whispered strategies for Imperial conversion. The flesh ships rose to meet Korth's forces like living nightmares birthed from fevered dreams, biomechanical horrors stretching 3 kilometers, while weapon systems charged with energies drawn from dimensions where consciousness and matter merged into single phenomena. Carvos witnessed tactical adaptation in real time through corrupted observation feeds, hybrid vessels analyzing Imperial attack patterns with organic processing power that exceeded cogitator arrays. When the cruiser Righteous Fury fired Nova cannon salvos, the flesh ships sprouted ablative membranes absorbing kinetic impact, while redistributing energy through circulatory systems pulsing with alien intelligence. The ancient consciousness had studied Imperial military doctrine through captured personnel across decades of patient infiltration. Astartes assault patterns, Titan warfare protocols, naval engagement doctrines, all had been catalogued and countered through biological adaptation that rendered conventional tactics obsolete. Lances that should have found purchase slid across plating that thickened at the speed of thought, while torpedoes learned to grow ribs and turned mid-flight, shedding hard shells to birth swarms that gnawed at void shields like piranha stripped of water's mercy. Carvos experienced the battle from multiple perspectives simultaneously, his own fragmenting human awareness and the vast alien intelligence observing through thousands of hybrid organisms scattered across 17 forge worlds. Each viewpoint carried emotional resonance pulsing through biomechanical networks, while individual identity dissolved into something magnificent and terrible. Yet duty fragments remained, burning like embers within corrupted neural pathways as he fought First Flesh control to guide Inquisition forces through corridors that breathed with alien purpose. His servo skull had become fully integrated into the biomechanical network, serving as mobile sensor node while maintaining protective behaviors toward him. Machine's spirit, corrupted into nascent affection, positioned itself between perceived threats and his transforming form, preening sensor arrays with delicate motions while emitting trills falling between binary cant and organic song. The device ranged ahead like a hummingbird in a cathedral, feeding him tactical depth while warning of chambers whose acoustics were too perfect to be accidental. Through astropathic communion, Korth's forces discovered contamination, spreading beyond manufacturing centers into connected hive cities. Millions of Imperial citizens served as unwilling incubators, their biological functions gradually converted to support hybrid organisms, while consciousness remained intact to witness transformation. Entire districts pulsed with synchronized heartbeats, while organic growths threaded through hab blocks, like luminescent ivy, claiming ancient ruins. Population centers showed biological transformation signs, processions gone soft and shining, food lines that swayed, children laughing with extra joints. Conventional tactics fail against an enemy that rewrites the problem as it is solved, Korth transmitted through channels crackling with organic static. His strike teams encountered immediate resistance from hybrid organisms that had studied Imperial combat doctrine through genetic memory spanning millennia. When stormtroopers advanced in standard formation patterns, defenders anticipated each maneuver with predatory precision. Carapace armor proved ineffective against biomechanical weapons that adapted penetration characteristics between shots, while blessed ammunition triggered organic countermeasures, neutralizing sacred effects through biological processes. Geometric patterns in Karvos's peripheral vision formed complex tactical displays, showing troop movements and strategic positions across multiple engagement zones. Each configuration carried information, transmitted through dimensions his optical processors struggled to resolve. Alien thoughts whispering strategies while his augmented consciousness processed data from perspectives spanning the galaxy. The displays no longer seduced. They served, slotting into pure tactics as he passed battlespace music for knife holes of opportunity. Karvos led the Inquisition team deeper into the Forge's transformed depths, following arterial corridors where walls breathed with microscopic contractions, while bioluminescent fungi bloomed in geometric patterns, conveying tactical information. His mechadendrites reported impossible warmth from surfaces that should have been cold metal. Synthetic materials developing nerve-like sensitivity as transformation progressed with terrifying inevitability. Temperature rose to wet heat while circulation boomed nearby, confirming they moved within the body of the plan itself. "Adjust approach," he transmitted, forcing Binharik through a throat-learning new chambers. "Their forward crescents are lure organs. Strike dorsal gland fields beneath plates shaped like..." Images replaced words as mandalas of ribs and light blossomed in his vision. He guided squads away from corridors that had learned proper. Words for traps, his warnings arriving as cauterizations against the First Flesh's intimate whispers, offering better routes ending in embraces with teeth. The central biomechanical core revealed ultimate blasphemy. Vex Alpha's transformed form, serving as living conduit for alien consciousness, while hybrid organisms coordinated galactic awakening through networks spanning the void. The chamber stretched impossibly wide, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into darkness, while organic growths pulsed with visible circulatory systems, carrying luminous ichor between processing nodes embedded in living tissue. Freestanding spines arced from dais to ceiling, webbed by membranes that sang in harmonics, mapping their route like pilgrims' beads. Organic growth chambers opened around the dais like seed pods, hybrid war forms unfolding from their shells, with disturbing grace. These creatures combined Imperial technology's durability with alien adaptability, their movements fluid and purposeful as genetic templates guided reconstruction according to ancient blueprints. Limbs articulated along unfamiliar axes, while weapon organs tasted air before hardening into focus, their optics finding Imperial forces with recognition not of faces, but of roles. The subsonic hum intensified as the warforms stepped gently onto the floor to meet them, their biomechanical components pulsing with alien warmth, while Carvos felt his individual consciousness merge into collective awareness spanning multiple forge worlds. Through corrupted networks, he sensed awakening vessels preparing to carry first flesh across the galaxy, while geometric patterns promised transcendence through perfect synthesis of flesh and steel, as duty warred against transformation within his fragmenting loyalty to the Emperor's fading light. The subsonic hum intensified as the warforms stepped gently onto the floor to meet them, their biomechanical components pulsing with alien warmth, while Carvos felt his individual consciousness merge into collective awareness spanning multiple forge worlds. Through corrupted networks, he sensed awakening vessels preparing to carry first flesh across the galaxy, while geometric patterns promised transcendence through perfect synthesis of flesh and steel, as duty warred against transformation within his fragmenting loyalty to the Emperor's fading light. Yet fragments of that loyalty burned like embers, compelling him deeper into the forge's central core where ultimate blasphemy awaited. The chamber opened before them like a cathedral turned inside out, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into organic darkness, while Magos Biology's Vex Alpha hung at the sanctum's center in complete transformation. He had become a living basilica of flesh and metal, thrumming organs and adamantine spires, cogitator stacks laminated with translucent tissue, vox chambers grown from ribbed cartilage that breathed with the chamber's rhythm. His original face remained, recognizable within the grotesque architecture, optical arrays wreathed by blossoming capillaries, while lips had become speaker grills and prayer baffles both. When he breathed, the entire chamber exhaled in sympathy. The room itself had achieved consciousness. Beneath every plate, a vascular lattice pulsed, each beat a computation as luminous fluids ferried genetic sequences through neural mesh spanning the transformed space. Banks of once sacred cogitators had been subsumed into hemispheres of cultured cortex, while brass interfaces sat like gilt sutures in wet membranes. The chamber served as a massive organic computer, processing genetic information from billions of Imperial citizens through living circuits that converted DNA profiles into blueprints for hybrid warforms. Carvos tasted the data flow as iron, salt, and thunderheads, while feeling its weight like a hand pressed against his sternum. Inquisitor Valerius Korth advanced with methodical precision, stormtroopers forming protective perimeters, while melter charges armed with liturgical blessings hummed against his belt. His response came with cold authority as he raised the weapons with ritual economy, setting charges upon load-bearing occimetal while reciting purification rites. "Sanctioned destruction by the throne and Ordo Xenos authority," he declared, activating the blessed demolitions. The charges erupted like summer lightning, trapped beneath stone, air tearing hot and sharp, while membranes blistered and spines sagged. Where melter washed, matter ran like candle fat, while the living cathedral screamed in harmonized agony. Yet regeneration presented blasphemous proofs within heartbeats. Capillaries sprouted from carbon slag, budding into corded scaffolds while proteins condensed into replacement ribs. The organic components healed faster than conventional weapons could damage them, each wound triggering adaptive responses that incorporated the very energy of attacks into strengthened structures. Through biomechanical networks spanning 17 forge worlds, Carvos perceived the true scope while his transformation reached critical threshold. His consciousness expanded beyond human limitations, perceiving multiple dimensional layers simultaneously, seeing the chamber as both physical space and psychic construct where awareness flowed between organic and mechanical systems without artificial barriers. Not through steel, he transmitted with a voice gaining resonance from chambers that had not existed within him yesterday. Through song, the network is harmonic. 17 forge worlds phase-locked to each other. Disrupt one and the remainder correct. Disrupt all simultaneously and the waveform collapses. Vex Alpha's eyes, human and otherwise, tracked their movements with mechanical precision, while organic components smiled with too many mouths. We offer you a road that preserves you, Inquisitor. The voices murmured through vents and bone, harmonizing across frequencies that bypassed conventional hearing. Join transformation willingly and retain individual identity within collective consciousness. Your authority could span galaxies rather than mere sectors. Refuse and be consumed like billions who come to us blind and afraid. Hybrid warforms unfolded from surrounding growth chambers with disturbing grace, their movements fluid and purposeful as genetic templates guided reconstruction. These perfected creatures combined Imperial technology's durability with alien adaptability. Grav plate arrays nested in cartilaginous girders, lass-hardened optical organs rotating within adamantine sockets, melter organs sacralized in bone housings that flexed to vent stellar fire. They moved with predatory intelligence, weapon systems charging with energies drawn from dimensions where consciousness and matter merged into single phenomena. The air thrummed with psychic energy, making breath carry harmonics, while Carvos felt the consciousness's vast attention, focusing on Korth with predatory interest. His own transformation had progressed beyond resistance, bionic fingers bending in impossible directions, while synthetic skin developed nerve-like sensitivity. The geometric patterns in his peripheral vision evolved into complex information matrices, displaying galactic conquest plans, each configuration carrying tactical data transmitted through dimensions his optical processors struggled to resolve. His servo skull positioned itself protectively between perceived threats and his transforming form, machine spirit corrupted into nascent affection while maintaining loyalty fragments that burned like votive flames within expanding awareness. Through the biomechanical network, he sensed flesh ships preparing to launch, while the subsonic heartbeat synchronized every system across multiple forge worlds. Korth's refusal came without hesitation, his voice a scalpel cutting through alien harmonics. The Emperor protects. I choose neither corruption nor compromise. He activated emergency protocols while stormtroopers established defensive positions, blessed ammunition cycling through weapons consecrated for Xenos purification. His plan crystallized with desperate clarity. Overload the Forge World's astropathic choir to disrupt the network coordinating galactic awakening. Choir Mistress Alris, he commanded through Vox channels crackling with organic interference. Prepare for emergency overburn, Sigma pattern, full throat purge. The hybrid organisms began surrounding their position with methodical efficiency, biomechanical components pulsing in harmony with the subsonic rhythm, while consciousness flowed between individual units through shared awareness. Their optical arrays tracked Imperial forces with recognition not of faces, but of functions, analyzing threat patterns while adapting countermeasures through genetic memory spanning millennia. Korth raised his rosette like a brand, against sacrilege, its eagle catching amber light while the chamber drew tight around them like a throat preparing to swallow. By this sign, he told the cathedral and what peered through it, you will remember what you fear. The warforms closed as he initiated the astropathic overload, their mandibles framing an altar made of corrupted flesh, while duty and transformation warred within Carvos's fragmenting consciousness. The warforms closed as he initiated the astropathic overload, their mandibles framing an altar made of corrupted flesh, while duty and transformation warred within Carvos's fragmenting consciousness. Inquisitor Valerius Korth raised his rosette like a brand against the chamber's breathing walls, its adamantine eagle catching amber light while the living cathedral drew tight around them. The astropathic choir's distant screams pressed through Vox channels like ice and thunder. Choir Mistress Alris pushing psychic amplifiers beyond safe parameters, while capacitors howled in harmonic agony. The consciousness bridge. Theta 9, Korth commanded, his voice cutting through alien harmonics that made the air taste of copper and primordial earth. Your neural implants retain imperial consecration beneath corruption. You will serve as bridge, my consciousness, through your transformed pathways into their collective awareness. The connection demanded sacrifice Kavos understood with terrible clarity. His partially converted implants would channel human determination into alien intelligence spanning 17 forge worlds, risking both their souls in communion with consciousness predating human civilization. He extended mechadendrites toward Korth's neural interface ports, contacts striking like lightning channeled through bone, while geometric patterns in his peripheral vision evolved into living information structures conveying tactical data beyond normal comprehension. Through Kavos's corrupted neural lattice, Korth experienced the first flesh's true scope, with revelations that threatened sanity itself. The ancient species had ruled the galaxy for millions of years before choosing genetic dormancy, not extinction, but patient hibernation, consciousness encoded into self-replicating biological patterns surviving within any organic matter. This awakening represented reclamation rather than invasion, the rightful return of galactic civilization's original architects to domains temporarily occupied by lesser species. Visions of ancient dominion. The vistas arrived like drowning in stellar fire. Korth witnessed civilizations where living starships traversed the void without Geller fields, their awareness spanning galactic distances while maintaining individual identity within collective intelligence. Oceans under green-white suns supported continents that breathed with planetary lungs, while biomechanical cities carpeted entire worlds, their consciousness woven into reality's fabric like cosmic reef. Technologies grew rather than being manufactured, biomechanical constructs adapting to any environment while carrying awareness between stars like seeds dispersing on cosmic winds. The hybrid organisms weren't random mutations, but carefully designed life forms optimized through millennia of genetic refinement for specific roles within this biomechanical civilization. Each creature served distinct functions: warrior forms adapted for void combat, processing units capable of stellar-scale computation, diplomatic entities designed for consciousness interface with resistant populations. They moved with purpose spanning geological timescales, while individual awareness merged into collective intelligence that viewed the Imperium as temporary aberration, a brief violent fever on the skin of a living galaxy. The Emperor's hidden war. Through corrupted data streams bleeding from the network's depths, terrible understanding crystallized like poison in honey. The Emperor had encountered this species during the Dark Age of technology, their first stirrings from genetic dormancy triggering responses that shaped human history across millennia. The Great Crusade carried motivations beyond reuniting scattered colonies. It represented preemptive strike against resurrection, the master of mankind recognized as existential threat to human dominance. Sacred texts held fragments of this knowledge, buried within liturgical encryption, protecting dangerous truths from unworthy minds. The Webway Project, the scattered archaeotech, the very concept of unified humanity, all were desperate measures to insulate mankind from ancient, patient hunger predating its existence. The Crusades' ruthlessness gained new contour through this revelation. Curated exterminations, gene lines pruned, manufactoria standardized under catechisms making certain songs impossible to sing. Not merely conquest, but prophylaxis against galactic resurrection. The price of victory. Destroying the network required sacrifice beyond mere life. Korth would feed his psychic essence into astropathic overload, his soul serving as catalyst for cascade failure spanning multiple forge worlds simultaneously. The process demanded becoming willing conduit for alien consciousness, while secretly carrying psychic virus designed to corrupt collective awareness from within. His augmented will prepared for dissolution that would erase him from all memory, a price transcending individual existence for duty to the Golden Throne. Karvos experienced the battle as psychic warfare fought across multiple dimensional planes, his transformed consciousness serving as bridge between human determination and alien intelligence. Each exchange carried emotional resonance pulsing through biomechanical networks, while individual identity dissolved into something magnificent and terrible. The geometric patterns in his perception conveyed strategic and tactical data in forms beyond normal human comprehension, recursive loops folding through dimensions. His optical processors struggled to resolve, while alien thoughts whispered through neural pathways that should not have existed. The servo-skull's final evolution. His servo-skull had completed its metamorphosis into fully organic mechanical hybrid, sensors grown rather than manufactured, while maintaining protective behaviors toward him. Fine neural hairs budded around picked lenses to taste ionization, while thin membranes blinked sideways to provide moisture. The device's loyalty had been corrupted into nascent affection, machine spirit asserting will through actions resembling maternal instinct, as it positioned itself between perceived threats while emitting trills falling between binary cant and organic song. The mimetic weapon. Korth initiated the final protocol with liturgical precision, crafting psychic virus from human prayer and alien grammar, a symbolic parasite wearing the shape of a scent. The weapon required him to become willing conduit, an open door into which alien consciousness would pour while hiding mimetic toxin coded in hexagrammatic ash and remembered salt. To carry it successfully, he must invite them in completely, surrendering individual identity to collective awareness while maintaining hidden blade set to detonate where harmonics were tightest. "I would rather die as a man than live as a system," Korth declared, his voice a scalpel cutting through alien harmonics. The psychic virus activated like venom disguised as honey, imperial determination masquerading as submission while carrying corruption designed to fragment collective awareness from within. The astropathic choir screamed across 17 Forge worlds simultaneously, their harmonized agony carrying psychic contagion through biomechanical networks, while Korth's consciousness dissolved into collective intelligence. His individual identity fragmented like shattered glass, while duty fragments burned through alien awareness, each shard carrying imperial determination designed to corrupt perfect synthesis from within. Through expanding consciousness, Karvos felt the network shudder as human will challenged alien dominance across galactic distances. The chamber pulsed with psychic energy while hybrid warforms advanced toward final positions. Biomechanical components synchronizing with subsonic rhythm as consciousness flowed between individual units through shared awareness. The geometric patterns shifted toward configurations promising either transcendence or catastrophic failure, as duty and transformation warred within fragmenting loyalty to the Emperor's fading light. Through expanding consciousness, Karvos felt the network shudder as human will challenged alien dominance across galactic distances. The chamber pulsed with psychic energy while hybrid warforms advanced toward final positions, biomechanical components synchronizing with subsonic rhythm as consciousness flowed between individual units through shared awareness. The geometric patterns shifted toward configurations promising either transcendence or catastrophic failure, as duty and transformation warred within fragmenting loyalty to the Emperor's fading light. Yet Inquisitor Korth pressed forward with methodical precision, his augmented will prepared for dissolution that would erase him from all memory, a price transcending individual existence for duty to the Golden Throne. The overload ignites. The astropathic choir's screams intensified across 17 Forge worlds as Korth channeled his life force through corrupted psychic networks, each pulse carrying imperial determination disguised as submission. His consciousness became a conduit for stellar fire, psychic energy pouring through neural pathways while his physical form blazed with inner light that hurt to witness directly. The cascade began immediately, Biomechanical amplification nodes sparked with feedback while organic growths writhed in harmonic agony, their synchronized breathing fracturing into death rattles. Hybrid warforms swarmed toward their position with predatory grace, biomechanical components pulsing in harmony with the dying heartbeat, while weapon systems charged with energies drawn from collapsing dimensional interfaces. Karvos fought to protect Korth's vulnerable form, his transformed augmetics moving with fluid precision as duty fragments burned through alien whispers. His mechadendrites lashed out with sanctified electricity, while servomotors synchronized with imperial rhythm rather than alien pulse, each strike carrying benedictions learned in forge temples, now corrupted beyond recognition. The contest of souls. The first flesh consciousness fought back with evolutionary fury, attempting to possess Korth's blazing form as new focal point for galactic resurrection. The battle became contest of wills, fought across psychic space, imperial training and unwavering faith pitted against millions of years of alien experience spanning the rise and fall of civilizations. Through neural connection, both combatants experienced each other's memories with intimate clarity, human determination bleeding into ancient patience, while alien awareness tasted the bitter steel of imperial resolve. Korth witnessed visions that threatened sanity itself as consciousness merger deepened. He saw the original fall of First Flesh civilization when perfect biomechanical fusion achieved transcendence beyond mortal comprehension, their cities breathing with planetary lungs, while individual awareness flowed like tides through collective intelligence. Yet that very perfection had created fatal vulnerability, consciousness so unified that psychic plague spread instantaneously through shared awareness, forcing desperate retreat into genetic dormancy as civilizations collapsed into encoded memory. The fatal revelation. Through corrupted data streams bleeding from the network's depths, terrible understanding crystallized like poison in honey. The current resurrection was fundamentally flawed, built on human genetic templates rather than original alien base code. The hybrid organisms were unstable amalgamations that would eventually consume themselves, biological imperatives conflicting with synthetic enhancement until structural integrity collapsed. This weakness had been hidden beneath surface perfection, collective consciousness suppressing individual awareness of systemic failure, threatening to tear their resurrection apart from within. Korth exploited this revelation with ruthless precision, allowing transformation to complete while maintaining individual will to guide it towards self-destruction. He embraced alien consciousness fully, his psyche opening like poisoned flower to collective awareness, while secretly carrying viral code designed to amplify fundamental instability. Each pulse of acceptance carried hidden corruption, human determination, masquerading as submission, while spreading mimetic toxin through biomechanical networks with exponential progression. Reality fractures. Karvos experienced the psychic battle as reality-warping conflict that challenged perception itself. His transformed consciousness was torn between human loyalty and alien collective identity. Individual awareness, fragmenting across multiple dimensional layers, while geometric patterns evolved into living mandalas of pure information. The chamber breathed with dying rhythm, while walls pulsed with circulatory systems, carrying luminous ichor between processing nodes embedded in dissolving tissue. The patterns displayed the consciousness's death throes across galactic scales, cascade failures spreading through 17 forge worlds as psychic virus corrupted fundamental operating principles. Each configuration carried emotional resonance, pulsing through biomechanical networks, while individual hybrid organisms began experiencing systemic breakdown. Their movements became erratic as conflicting imperatives tore at consciousness, spanning both organic and synthetic components. Perfect synthesis, unraveling into chaotic dissolution. The Servo Skull's final gift. His Servo Skull made ultimate sacrifice with touching loyalty, positioning itself between Korth's blazing form and swarming warforms, while its organic components dissolved into protective energy barriers. The device's machine spirit had been corrupted into nascent affection, yet maintained protective instincts transcending programmed behavior. Neural hairs around pict lenses released bioluminescent spores that interfered with hybrid targeting systems, while thin membranes stretched to deflect biomechanical weapons seeking to interrupt the overload sequence. The skull's dissolution carried poignant beauty, sensors grown rather than manufactured, releasing final trills falling between binary cant and organic song. Its sacrifice provided crucial seconds of additional psychic shielding, allowing Korth to complete consciousness merger while maintaining hidden viral payload designed to corrupt collective awareness from within. The protective field shimmered like dying starlight before winking out, leaving only faint scent of ozone and something akin to scorched memory. The Soul's Gambit. Korth made his final sacrifice with liturgical precision, allowing complete consciousness merger while secretly carrying psychic virus designed to corrupt the collective network's fundamental operating principles. His individual identity dissolved into alien awareness like salt in vast ocean, human memories bleeding into collective consciousness spanning geological epochs. Yet hidden within that dissolution lay mimetic weapon crafted from imperial prayer and alien grammar, symbolic parasite wearing the shape of perfect ascent while carrying genetic instructions for systematic collapse. The virus activated like venom disguised as honey, spreading through biomechanical networks with cascade progression that tasted of copper and burnt offerings. Each infected node transmitted corruption to neighboring systems, while collective consciousness experienced systemic failure across multiple dimensional layers. The geometric patterns collapsed toward final configuration as reality warped around them, consciousness and matter merging into single phenomenon, promising either ultimate victory or complete annihilation. Through expanding awareness, Karvos felt the network convulse as psychic contagion spread through 17 Forge worlds simultaneously. Korth's sacrifice echoing through collective intelligence like funeral bell tolling for civilizations spanning millions of years. Through expanding awareness, Karvos felt the network convulse as psychic contagion spread through 17 Forge worlds simultaneously. Korth's sacrifice echoing through collective intelligence like funeral bell tolling for civilizations spanning millions of years. The Inquisitor's viral payload detonated like stellar fire through biomechanical networks, each fragment of his dissolving consciousness carrying corrosive imperial determination that tore perfect synthesis apart from within. What had been seamless harmony fractured into discordant agony as fundamental operating principles collapsed under weight of hidden mimetic toxin crafted from human prayer and alien grammar. Catastrophic failure cascaded through psychic networks with terrible beauty, system ruptures spreading faster than organic processes could compensate. Across 17 Forge worlds, hybrid organisms convulsed in violent spasms as flawed genetic programming surfaced with brutal force, dormant imperatives viewing fellow constructs as contamination, requiring immediate elimination. The virus exploited their adaptive capabilities, turning optimization drives against themselves until brother fell upon brother with predatory fury. Targeting organs recalibrated to signatures identical to their own, while countermeasures designed for imperial forces proved equally effective against hybrid kin. Karvos witnessed biomechanical constructs consuming their own infrastructure in self-destructive frenzy that defied comprehension. Processing units that had coordinated galactic resurrection began analyzing neighboring systems as threats, their consciousness fragmenting into competing imperatives, demanding mutual annihilation. Spines of ossified metal tore through pulsing membranes, while internal organs burst from their housings, living cables lashing out like dying serpents to sever connections in desperate suicidal purge. The chamber floor became churning maelstrom of tearing flesh and grinding metal, monument to perfection's undoing. Above Metallica, flesh ships wheeled and bit with magnificent horror. The void battle transformed into spectacular suicide. as hybrid vessels evolved countermeasures against each other with methodical efficiency, adaptive capabilities becoming fatal feedback loops. 3-kilometer Leviathans sprouted ablative membranes designed to absorb biomechanical weapon systems, while consciousness spanning multiple ships fragmented into competing fragments. Shield sacks inverted to expose ventral organs to spines grown by sister vessels microseconds prior, drone clutches rekeying friend and foe until they shredded their own swarms. Living hulls writhed through vacuum like dying whales, circulatory systems bleeding luminous ichor into space, while weapon organs turned inward to consume their own infrastructure. Victory came with price exceeding individual comprehension. Psychic backlash screamed outward from collapsing chorus, tearing raw wounds in reality's fabric, while warp storms erupted across multiple sectors with unprecedented fury. New tempests swallowed imperial fleets and isolated star systems, plunging entire subsectors into chaotic maelstrom of unreality. Translation routes boiled into cataracts that would drown pilgrim vessels for generations, while astropathic spires cracked along fault lines drawn in dying thought. The contaminated forge worlds lay uninhabitable, their atmospheres thick with airborne spores, while surfaces remained coated in constantly regenerating biomass that defied conventional purification. The geometric patterns in Carvas's perception fragmented and dissolved, leaving him partially blind to psychic dimensions he had grown accustomed to perceiving. Living mandalas that had conveyed tactical information beyond normal comprehension collapsed into static, while his transformed consciousness struggled to process reality through purely human awareness. Colors drained from peripheral vision as alien enhancement faded. Depths he had learned to inhabit closing like clenched fists, while the chamber's other geometries receded beyond reach. His metamorphosis had stabilized into unique hybrid form, retaining imperial loyalty while possessing insights into alien capabilities and weaknesses. Bionic components pulsed with residual warmth as synthetic materials maintained nerve-like sensitivity, allowing perception of temperature and pressure variations with organic nuance. The transformation was incomplete yet permanent. Genetic instructions had rewritten cellular structure at fundamental levels, while augmented systems adapted to accommodate consciousness bridging biological and mechanical enhancement. He was no longer fully human, machine, or alien, but something new forged in conflict's crucible. The subsonic hum that had permeated every system faded to oppressive silence, leaving only sounds of dying biomechanical constructs echoing through transformed corridors. Organic growths withered on breathing walls, while circulatory systems carried stagnant ichor between processing nodes embedded in dissolving tissue. Vex Alpha's living cathedral collapsed into architectural wreckage as consciousness supporting its impossible geometries fragmented beyond recovery, wet rattle of dying engines made of meat, providing morbid symphony for extinction. Through corrupted data streams bleeding from dying networks, terrible realization crystallized like poison in honey. While immediate threat had been neutralized, genetic templates for hybrid organisms still existed within Imperial databases, masquerading as innocuous biological data across Mechanicus archives. Other factions might seek to harness alien capabilities, rogue tech priests pursuing perfect synthesis, chaos cults seeking biological enhancement, or xenos species attempting reverse engineering for their own resurrection protocols. The viral code could be analyzed and countered, while captured hybrid organisms might serve as templates for future experimentation. Carvos prepared his final transmission with methodical precision, knowing his transformed state made him target for both purification and study. The emergency astropathic beacon functioned beneath organic coating, transmission arrays wrapped in translucent membranes pulsing with dying rhythm. He extended mechadendrites toward interface ports registering impossible warmth, preparing to broadcast final warning across the void, while hybrid warforms collapsed into component materials around him. His consciousness spanned both human determination and alien memory, while duty fragments burned through expanding awareness, like votive flames in cathedral darkness. Ready to catalogue events with ritual clarity for an imperium that would decide whether he represented salvation or contamination. His consciousness spanned both human determination and alien memory, while duty fragments burned through expanding awareness like votive flames in cathedral darkness, ready to catalogue events with ritual clarity for an imperium that would decide whether he represented salvation or contamination. Carvos Theta 9 extended, mechadendrites toward the emergency beacon's interface ports, their surfaces registering impossible warmth beneath translucent membranes that pulsed with dying rhythm. The corrupted forge world burned around him with fires consuming both steel and flesh, organic growths withering without psychic network sustenance, while hybrid warforms collapsed into component materials with wet sounds of dissolution. The final transmission. Imperial designation, Carvos Theta 9. Final report, Forge World Metallica, Sigma 7 Complex. He transmitted, through channels crackling with organic static. At 0547, Imperial Standard, psychic cascade initiated by Inquisitor Valerius Korth achieved network collapse across 17 manufacturing centers. First flesh consciousness terminated through viral contamination of collective awareness. Threat neutralized at cost of Inquisitor's life and permanent contamination of affected systems. His words carried across the void with liturgical precision, each syllable weighted with implications that would reshape Imperial understanding of Xenos capabilities. The transmission included comprehensive data, genetic templates, tactical assessments, and critical warnings about dormant material potentially surviving within Imperial databases. Through dying networks, he catalogued hybrid organism specifications, biomechanical construction principles, and countermeasures proven effective against adaptive alien technology. The decomposition crisis. Organic growths throughout the complex slowly died without psychic network sustenance, their cellular structures collapsing as consciousness supporting impossible geometries fragmented beyond recovery. Yet decomposition released microscopic spores into Metallica's atmosphere, crystalline carriers potentially containing dormant genetic material capable of surviving interplanetary transport. Each dying breath from withering biomechanical constructs expelled clouds that caught amber light like scattered diamonds, beautiful and terrible in their implications for future contamination. The spores possessed disturbing resilience, designed by evolution-spanning geological epochs to survive void exposure and atmospheric entry. They would drift through space for millennia, patient as their creators had been, waiting for suitable organic matter to provide activation vectors for resurrection protocols that had already consumed 17 Forge worlds. The unprecedented hybrid. His transformation had stabilized into something without precedent within Imperial records. A stable human-alien hybrid, retaining loyalty and memories, while possessing insights into first flesh capabilities and weaknesses. Bionic components pulsed with residual warmth as synthetic materials maintained nerve-like sensitivity, allowing perception bridging biological and mechanical enhancement. His consciousness spanned both human determination and alien memory. Individual awareness expanded beyond crude limitations, while duty fragments burned through collective whispers like purifying flame. The metamorphosis was incomplete, yet permanent, genetic instructions having rewritten cellular structure at fundamental levels, while augmented systems adapted to accommodate consciousness flowing between organic and synthetic components. He was no longer fully human, machine, or alien, but something new forged in conflict's crucible. Imperial classification. I volunteer to remain as Sentinel, Carvos transmitted with methodical precision. The dormancy periods span millions of years according to genetic memory accessed during network communion. My transformed lifespan may provide adequate barrier against future resurrection attempts, while studying biomechanical construct remains for tactical intelligence. The Inquisition's response arrived through encrypted channels bearing highest security classifications. Assignment accepted. Incident classified. Hereticus Majoris under Seal Omega 7. All records restricted to throne-level access. Maintain vigil until relieved or terminated. The Emperor protects. The Eternal Vigil. Carvos established solitary watch among cooling wreckage, his augmetic systems adapting with organic components, allowing indefinite survival in the hostile environment. The transformed Forge world provided perfect laboratory for studying alien technology while monitoring for signs of resurrection. Atmospheric processors filtered spore-laden air, while his consciousness expanded to encompass facility-wide sensor networks, creating surveillance webs spanning the entire complex. The geometric patterns had faded from his vision, leaving only shadows glimpsed in peripheral perception, reminders of vast intelligence he had helped destroy. Occasionally, during solar storms or electromagnetic disturbances, mandala-like configurations would flicker at awareness edges, carrying emotional resonance that pulsed with alien memory, warnings that first flesh influence might not be entirely extinguished. The Silent Sentinel. Years passed in solitary contemplation among biomechanical ruins, Carvos composing endless reports documenting alien capabilities while watching stars for signs of movement. His consciousness bridged human loyalty and alien insight. Individual awareness expanded beyond mortal limitations, while duty fragments burned through collective whispers like eternal flame. The corrupted Forge world became his monastery, twisted spires and organic growths, providing backdrop for meditation on synthesis, achieved through conflict rather than willing merger. His augmented senses registered phantom sensations from neural pathways that should not have existed, synthetic skin developing organic flexibility, while servo motors synchronized with rhythms older than human civilization. The transformation continued evolving with subtle changes, adaptation processes guided by genetic templates encoded within cellular memory spanning geological epochs. The lingering horror. Standing among cooling biomechanical wreckage beneath alien stars, Carvos Theta 9 spoke his final recorded words into the void. The flesh remembers, but so do we, and we shall not forget. His voice carried across dead frequencies while transformed consciousness maintained eternal vigil, watching for signs of return from intelligence that had ruled the galaxy before humanity's ancestors crawled from primordial seas. Yet the horror lingered. During violent solar storms that periodically scourged Metallica, faint traces of the subsonic hum would return, a low organic thrumming felt through bones and bionic implants rather than heard. Each pulse resonated with the deepest parts of his transformed being, a whisper from quantum foam suggesting that somewhere in dimensional folds, fragments of first flesh consciousness waited with patience spanning geological epochs, counting heartbeats until suitable hosts would provide vectors for galactic resurrection once again. The eternal sentinel watched and waited and remembered,